The rejection email lands at 9:17 in the morning. 3 lines from a junior editor in New York who says the manuscript has real tension, strong atmosphere, and no clear market path. I stare at the screen until the coffee beside my hand goes cold. I have read versions of that sentence for 4 years. No clear market path, no current fit, difficult to position, admired but not acquired. My novel sits on the desktop under the file name Ward 0 Final 4. 59 chapters, 320 pages, 8 months of work in a 1-bedroom apartment above a closed laundromat. I open the email again, close it, then drag the manuscript into a folder called Dead Projects. I almost laugh at the folder name, but nothing comes out. The city outside my window sounds normal. Buses on the avenue, a trash truck backing up, somebody arguing near the deli, one dog barking from the building across the alley. It is a plain Tuesday, and plain Tuesdays are dangerous when a person writes fiction for a living. A plain day leaves room for the head to wander. Mine always does. I leave the laptop open and go to the kitchen to wash out the mug. My phone buzzes near the sink. Not a call. A headline alert from a local station. 3 patients restrained after violent incident inside St. Gabriel Medical Center. Emergency department temporarily diverting ambulance traffic. I dry my hands and tap the alert. The article is thin. It says a possible drug exposure event caused confusion in several patients. 1 nurse suffered a minor injury. Police responded. That is it. The picture under the headline shows 2 ambulances parked nose to tail near the west entrance and yellow tape cutting across the drop-off lane. I know that entrance. I used it in chapter 7 of the novel. Not the same hospital name, not the same city, still same side entrance, same ambulance pileup, same first official phrase, possible drug exposure event. I wrote nearly that exact sentence for a county spokesperson in my book because I wanted something soft, vague, and familiar. I tell myself that hospital public relations people always sound the same. I tell myself I am noticing a pattern because I built one in my own head. Then I stand there another full minute with the article open anyway. Ward 0 starts in a hospital parking lot. I built the story around supply failure, public denial, and bad timing. No undead tearing through glass on page 1. No military jets. No giant conspiracy board with red string. I wanted something slower and more embarrassing. A county government trying to protect tourism numbers and bond ratings. Hospital administrators trying to avoid panic. Local reporters chasing half the truth because nobody tells a full one. The infection in the novel moves through emergency rooms first because sick people always go where the lights are on. It spreads through waiting areas, hall beds, ambulance bays, and urgent care clinics. It takes longer to notice because every early symptom fits 10 other things. Fever, confusion, falls, aggression, seizures. A person can file any of that under ordinary chaos. I did months of reading to make the chain feel boring and real. That was the part I wanted. Boring and real. Now I am looking at a real article with a photograph that belongs too close to my first act. I stop myself before I start spiraling. I shower, shave, pull on jeans and a gray sweatshirt, and carry my laundry bag downstairs, even though the laundromat under me shut down 6 months ago, and the nearest open place sits half a mile away. The stairs smell of dust and old detergent. On the first landing, I run into Luis from Unit 1. He has a cardboard tray of canned soup tucked under one arm and a phone in his other hand. He drives medical deliveries for a private contractor, which means he always knows more than he says. He nods at me, glances back at his phone, then says the hospital by the river is diverting too. He says it in the flat voice a person uses when he does not want to turn a rumor into a fact. I ask whether he heard anything solid. He shrugs. He says his dispatcher canceled half the afternoon route and told everybody to expect reroutes around emergency facilities. Then he asks whether I still write those end-of-the-world books. I say one end-of-the-world book. He grins once, tired and distracted, and says maybe I should write about rent going down. Then he heads out. At the laundromat on Mason Street, the televisions over the folding tables all show the same local station, with the sound turned low. Footage loops from outside St. Gabriel. Police tape. Paramedics moving fast. One man in blue scrubs holding a towel against his forearm. The banner at the bottom says Isolated Hospital Disturbance. Nobody in the room pays it much attention. A woman feeds quarters into a machine. 2 college kids lean over a game on a phone. An older man folds white shirts with careful hands. Normal behavior has its own force. A building can fill with warning signs, and people still choose the smallest explanation, because the smallest explanation lets a person finish laundry, buy bread, go home, and keep the week intact. I watch the silent television and think about the first time one of my characters hears the phrase isolated incident. He hears it 3 times in 6 hours. By midnight, his street is blocked by abandoned cars. I fold my shirts too fast, leave one still damp, and carry the bag back through a grocery store that smells wrong the moment I step in. Too much bleach, too much floor cleaner, not enough bread. The bread aisle is already patchy. Water looks picked through. Over by canned food, a woman is arguing with a clerk about purchase limits that did not exist yesterday. 2 men in work jackets stand in front of the medicine section comparing screenshots on one phone. I catch pieces, seizure case, school bus at the county clinic. My cousin works intake. None of it sounds firm. All of it sounds close enough to danger that people start buying canned beans at 11 in the morning. I take rice, pasta, batteries, cat litter, even though I do not own a cat, because clean, absorbent material solves enough problems that I have kept a bag around since college, and 3 cases of bottled water that I can barely carry. At the register, the cashier recognizes me from the coffee shop, where I used to write every Thursday. She asks whether I am working on anything new. I tell her I just finished one. She says good timing with a smile that does not know what I know. On the wall behind her, another television shows a live shot from outside City Hall. The mayor is supposed to speak at noon. I get out before that happens. Back upstairs, I wedge a chair under the apartment door, not because I think somebody is coming, just because the chair is there and the thought arrives. I stack groceries on the counter. The phone rings. Mara. I have not seen her in 3 weeks. We broke up last winter in the boring adult way. Too much money trouble, opposite schedules, too many conversations that turned into accounting. She still calls when something around town goes medically strange because my research habits used to amuse her. I answer on the second ring. I hear voices behind her and a metal clatter. She does not waste time. She asks whether I posted anything about St. Gabriel. I say no. She says somebody on a forum is putting screenshots from my manuscript next to local news clips. She sounds angry, but not at me. More at the fact that a hospital is turning into internet content while she is somewhere inside one. I ask where she is. She says Mercy South, 12-hour shift that turned into something longer. She says staff got told to keep language controlled around patients and families. She says a few cases came in with altered mental status after routine complaints. She says the story moving around inside the building changes every half hour, which means nobody is in charge. Then her voice lowers. She tells me not to come near an emergency department today for any reason. I ask what changed. She is quiet for 2 seconds. Then she says one patient coded after a fall in radiology and then sat up during transfer. Not awake in any normal sense. Not confused in any normal sense either. She says security had to pin him long enough for sedation, and a second patient bit an aide hard enough to send him to surgery. The hospital is calling it an extreme neurological event under active review. She says that phrase with enough disgust that I can see her face. I ask whether she is safe. She says safe is not the word she would choose. Then somebody calls her name, and she says she has to go. Before she hangs up, she tells me one more thing. Do not open the manuscript online if somebody sends it. Do not reply to anybody asking questions. Just shut up and stay inside until somebody figures out what this is. Her voice breaks on the last word, not from fear, from exhaustion and anger. Then the line dies. I do exactly what she told me not to do. 10 minutes later, I open the laptop and search my name with the book title. Nothing at first. Then a thread on a horror forum I have not visited in months. Somebody uploaded 6 pages from Ward 0 sometime before dawn. My old cover page is attached, the cheap one I made for queries. My name is right there under the title in clean white letters. The thread starts as a joke. Local writer predicted hospital mess, creepy timing. Somebody call the studio. Then it turns fast. One user posts a line from Chapter 9 where the county health office instructs hospitals to use school buses for non-critical transfers when ambulance availability falls below threshold. Another user answers with a shaky video from outside a clinic on the east side. There are 2 yellow school buses in the frame behind a chain fence. The video could be old. The buses could be parked there for any harmless reason. The comments do not care. A third user posts a page from Chapter 14 that mentions refrigerated trailers arriving before public acknowledgement. Another user says 3 trucks showed up behind Mercy South 2 hours earlier. A moderator tries to lock the thread. Too late. Screen captures are already spreading. I sit at the kitchen table with the laptop open and my groceries still half unpacked. It would be easy to say I know exactly why the book matches. I do not. I know why the broad structure matches. I researched emergency management manuals, hospital surge planning, old pandemic exercises, county procurement records, and nursing forms where staff talked around rules when administrators refused to say anything useful. I know how to build realistic fiction from scraps. That part is honest. The part that bothers me sits inside the details. Some details came from a source I never met. An email account that started sending me public records requests, bid documents, and one leaked planning annex about 12 months ago. The sender used the name North Exit. No demands, no threats, just short notes. This might help your book. This is how freezer truck contracts are written. This is the wording counties use before they admit shortage. Most of it looked real. All of it fit my project. I used it, changed names, and buried it in fiction. I never asked enough questions because a broke writer does not interrogate luck too hard. Now I am looking at the screen and thinking, maybe I should have. At noon, the mayor steps up behind a podium outside City Hall and says the city is dealing with a limited public health disruption centered on a small number of medical facilities. He says residents should avoid spreading unverified rumors. He says grocery supply chains remain stable. He says the police department has no indication of widespread public danger. He says emergency crews are responding with full support from county partners. I watch him speak and hear my own sentence structure. Not word for word. Close enough that I mute the stream and pull open Chapter 5. The county administrator in my novel says the event is limited, managed, localized, and under professional review. I wrote those words because they are the sort of words institutions reach for when they are trying to buy half a day. The mayor looks left at somebody off camera after every third sentence. One question from a reporter gets cut off. Another gets a non-answer about patient privacy. The feed ends after 4 minutes. The station goes back to footage of hospital entrances and traffic. I start packing before I fully admit I am packing. 2 backpacks. Water, flashlight, batteries, power banks, notebook, spare charger, canned food, a change of clothes, my old camping stove, cash from the jar above the fridge, and the little revolver my father left me after his house got cleaned out last year. I keep it unloaded in a lockbox under the bed because I have never been comfortable around guns. Yet discomfort does not matter once city statements start sounding borrowed from your own chapters. I load it from the box of cartridges I bought after a break-in on the block last summer. My hands move slow, not shaking, just deliberate. 1 round, close the cylinder, set it in the bottom of the pack under socks where I will not have to look at it. Then I print 2 full copies of the manuscript, because part of my brain is still a writer and still thinks pages matter. The printer chatters for 20 minutes. It sounds too loud. Every page that slides into the tray makes me more aware of the apartment door. By mid-afternoon, the internet gets worse. Not gone, choked. Video buffers. Messages arrive out of order. One from my agent, whose faith in me has always been held together with politeness and a long view. He says a regional blog picked up the screenshot story. Another from an unknown number that just reads, "How did you know about birch intake?" Birch intake is not a phrase I invented. I know that the instant I read it because I used Birch Protocol in an early draft after seeing the term Birch Annex on one of North Exit's documents. I changed the wording before queries went out. Nobody outside my hard drive should know the original phrase. I stare at the message until the screen dims. Then another text arrives from a different number. It has a photograph attached. My apartment building. Front entrance. Caption under it. Author lives here. Need answers. I do not call the police. I look out the window first. 2 men stand across the street near the dry cleaner, both holding phones. Maybe they are waiting for a rideshare. Maybe one of them just pointed his camera toward the brick front because the light was good. Maybe. I step back anyway. Luis bangs on my door before I can decide what to do. Not a panicked pounding. 3 hard knocks. I open with the chain set. He stands in the hall with his delivery jacket half zipped and sweat darkening the collar. He says 2 strangers were asking downstairs whether a writer named Ben Mercer lived in the building. He did not answer. He says one of them mentioned a hospital code and kept saying the book was a roadmap. I ask whether more people are outside. He says a few. Hard to tell who belongs to the street and who showed up for me. He glances over my shoulder at the packed bags on the floor and gives one short nod. Smart, he says. He is carrying a duffel of his own. He tells me his dispatcher sent a group message canceling all routes until further notice and warning drivers to avoid clinics, nursing homes, and police cordons. That is enough for him. He asks whether I have anywhere to go. I tell him maybe the print shop on Halpern where I used to work nights. Roll down steel doors, loading dock, rooftop access, a maintenance generator that might still run. He thinks for 2 seconds and says that is better than waiting here. I am still answering when we hear shouting from the street below. Not screaming yet. Angry voices. A car horn held too long. Then somebody on the sidewalk yells my last name. No question in it. Just Mercer, drawn out once. Luis looks past me into the apartment and says I have 5 minutes. He goes downstairs to move his van into the alley behind the building. I finish packing the printed manuscript without knowing why. Part instinct. Part shame at leaving the only thing I spent a year building. I take the hard drive, the laptop, and North Exit's emails copied into a folder with no label. Before I leave, I open the hall closet and pull the fire extinguisher down from the top shelf. I carry that in my free hand because the building is old and narrow, and close quarters matter now in a way they did not this morning. When I step into the stairwell, I hear the front bell downstairs buzzing over and over. Somebody is leaning on it. I do not go toward the front. I go up. Roof access. Across the tar roof to the next building. Down the rear metal stairs into the alley where Luis said he would meet me. The roof door sticks from swollen wood. I shoulder it open and step into sharp spring light. Sirens move in 3 directions at once. Not constant yet. Frequent enough that the city hum has changed underneath everything else. From the roof, I can see east toward the hospital district. There is smoke somewhere low near the freeway, gray and thin. On the avenue below, 3 people are filming the front of my building. One holds up a phone and keeps talking to it, head turned toward the camera, free hand chopping the air. I do not hear the words. I do not need to. One person points up and the others look. I get low and move across the roof between vents and puddles. The gap to the next building is 3 feet over an alley. I have crossed it once before after too many drinks and a stupid bet with an old neighbor. Doing it sober with 2 packs and a printer box digging into my arms takes all the humor out of memory. I slide 1 bag across first, then step, land badly, catch myself on gravel, and keep moving. Behind me, somebody on the street shouts again. Luis has the van backed against the rear stair when I come down. White delivery van with magnetic company signs half peeled off. Engine running, passenger door open. He takes 1 look at the box under my arm and asks whether I am bringing the book. I say yes. He shakes his head, but says nothing else. Before I can climb in, another car skids into the alley mouth and stops. A woman jumps out with a hospital badge still clipped to the waistband of borrowed jeans. Mara. Her hair is tied back with a strip torn from some blue disposable gown. She gets into the van without greeting either of us, slams the door, and says go. Luis does. The alley spits us onto 4th, just before a cluster of people turn in from the front sidewalk. 2 of them pound the side of the van. One man shouts that I have to tell him where the safe intake site is. Another yells that he read chapter 12 and knows I am hiding something. Luis guns the engine, clips a trash can, and we are through traffic before the next hand hits metal. Mara twists in her seat long enough to watch the alley disappear. Then she says the hospital lost 2 floors in under an hour. She talks in fragments while Luis threads the van through side streets. Mercy South went into internal lockdown around 1 in the afternoon. Security chained 1 corridor because a patient who had been declared dead in imaging attacked a transporter during body movement. Staff argued over wording. Nobody wanted to say dead because dead narrows the world too fast. Another cluster of patients arrived from an assisted living facility with fever, confusion, and injuries from falls. 2-bit staff during restraint. Someone pulled a fire alarm to open doors. Family members forced entry on the ambulance bay because administrators stopped letting visitors in. County officials arrived, held a meeting behind closed doors, then ordered a media line about contaminated stimulant tablets circulating through shelters. Mara says half the staff stopped believing that within 15 minutes. The other half kept repeating it because repeating a lie still gives a person something to do. She left when security stopped checking badges and started barricading doors with supply carts. On her way out, she saw a refrigerated trailer backing up behind the loading dock. Same hospital stage, same timing, same ugly logic. I ask the question that has been sitting between my teeth all day. Does it match the book closely enough to scare her? She turns in the passenger seat and stares at me hard. There is dirt on her forehead and dried blood on one shoelace. Not her blood, I assume. She says yes. Then she says the part that bothers her most is not the hospital spread or the county script. It is a phrase she heard from one of the administrators on a phone call. Birch intake, not Birch annex, not Birch protocol. Birch intake. She says that phrase went out over internal staff messages with instructions to prepare overflow triage off-site. I tell her I got that wording in a text an hour ago. Luis glances over from the wheel. Nobody speaks for a block and a half. On either side of us, people are still doing normal things with too much speed. Dragging water jugs, carrying pharmacy bags, loading dog food into trunks, arguing on sidewalks, staring at phones. That kind of movement can hold a city together until one small crack becomes visible to everybody at once. I know the timing from my book. I hate knowing it. We head west first because Luis wants fuel and knows a station near the interstate where delivery drivers fill company vehicles. He thinks the pump card still works. The lot is already chaos when we pull in. Cars stacked crooked at every island. One pump knocked sideways. A man holding a plastic lawnmower can while he screams at the clerk through locked glass. Luis swears, reverses, and cuts around the back of the building. 2 blocks later, he tries a second station with better luck. Half the pumps are dead, but one line still moves. Mara and I stay in the van while he fills both the tank and 2 spare cans from the cargo area. Across the street, a pharmacy has a security gate half down and people banging on it from outside. Not a mob, not a riot. A bad line under pressure. An old man falls, somebody helps him up, another person shoves forward anyway. I keep waiting for the city to turn into the version from movies because that version is easy to recognize. Real collapse arrives in layers. Lines stop moving. Doors close. People stop pretending there will be enough for all of them. My phone catches a signal long enough for messages to hit in a burst. My agent again. A national culture site ran a piece titled "The Horror Manuscript" that predicted the hospital event. A podcaster wants an interview. 3 more unknown numbers ask about Birch intake, refrigerated trailers, and where the county will hold nonviolent cases. One message says my deleted query letter is archived online with my old author photo. Another says somebody dug up an interview where I talked about public institutions during disaster fiction. That interview had 30 views when it came out. Now strangers are clipping lines from it and laying them over footage of ambulances. Mara tells me to shut the phone off. I almost do. Then an email notification flashes from North Exit. Subject line: Stop carrying the pages. The body has 1 sentence. Fiction is no longer safe cover. Burn any hard copy. Then a second email arrives 30 seconds later. There is a locker at Halpern Records Annex, number 112, key taped under the sink in press room at Delgado Print. Go before dark. After that, no more contact. Delgado Print is the shop I told Luis about. Halpern Records Annex sits 3 blocks away in the same industrial district. I read the email twice and feel the van closing in around me. Mara asks who sent it. I tell her the short version: anonymous source, records, planning documents, material for the book. She does not yell. She just rubs both hands over her face and says, "Of course." Of course the broke novelist had a secret source feeding him government paperwork. Luis asks whether I trust the message. I answer honestly. I trust that the sender exists. I do not know what else I trust. He says that is enough for now because we need a destination, and the industrial district is off the main rush routes. We go. On the freeway overpass above us, traffic is already stalled solid in both westbound lanes. A sheriff unit sits sideways across one entrance ramp. That entrance ramp closure is in Chapter 11 too. I stop looking at things in terms of chapters after that because doing so makes the city feel pre-written, and it is not. It is just failing along familiar lines. The route south takes us past 3 schools. At the second one, buses are lined nose out behind a locked gate with district employees carrying boxes from a loading door to the luggage compartments. Mara stares through the windshield and says the county must be preparing to move low-acuity patients or to stage family reunification somewhere away from hospitals. Then she cuts herself off because both options sound absurd and reasonable at the same time. On the corner outside a strip mall clinic, 2 police officers are trying to keep people back from the glass doors, while a woman in scrubs pounds on the inside and points behind her. I do not see what she is pointing at. We move on. Smoke rises darker now from somewhere near the river. Sirens merge into the background and stop meaning event. A city can absorb a few sirens. Once sirens become weather, something has shifted. Luis takes a frontage road, then a service street lined with cinder block warehouses, tire shops, and fenced lots stacked with pipes. The farther we get from downtown, the less crowded it looks. The quieter part always comes before the part that counts. Delgado Print sits where I left it last year. Faded sign, corrugated metal roll doors, front office windows dusty from the inside, loading dock at the back behind a chain gate. I worked nights there for 18 months after my last teaching contract fell through. Flyers, menus, church programs, event banners, mailers for law firms. The owner retired and never sold. He just locked it and moved to Florida. I still have the side key because nobody ever asked for it back, and because broke people hang on to keys that might matter later. The gate padlock looks untouched. We pull the van inside, close the gate, and kill the engine. For the first time all day, there is no immediate pressure sound around us. Just distant traffic and one helicopter somewhere far east. The quiet bothers me more than the shouting did. I get out first, cross to the side door, and fit the key into the lock with hands that have done this motion 1,000 times. It sticks, turns, and opens. Dust, paper, old ink, machine oil. Familiar enough that my shoulders loosen by about 1/2 inch. Familiar does not mean safe. It still helps. We clear the building room by room. Front office first. Empty. 2 dead computers on desks. Filing cabinets locked. Break room next with stale coffee smell trapped in the walls and a long industrial sink under a row of cabinets. Press floor after that. Wide open space. 3 silent digital presses. Pallet jack. paper stacks wrapped in plastic, cutter station, binding machine, maintenance closet, and the rolling ladder that used to scare every temp on first shift. No movement, no damage. Back hallway to the dock office and storage. Still clear. Roof access ladder in the rear. Luis climbs first and checks the perimeter. Clear there too. We bring the van around to the dock and unload fast. Water, food, fuel cans, med bag from Mara's car, my packs, tools from the maintenance closet, and one old generator the shop owner kept for short outages. By the time the roll door is down and chained from inside, the place begins to feel less abandoned and more occupied. That is a dangerous comfort. I know it, but I take it anyway. The taped key sits exactly where the email said, under the press room sink, stuck to the underside with gray duct tape gone stiff at the edges. Small brass locker key with 112 scratched into the head. Mara watches me peel it off. She asks what the records annex is. I tell her it used to store paper files for county contracts before everything went digital. She asks why an anonymous source would stash something there instead of sending another email. I do not have a clean answer. Maybe because attachments get traced. Maybe because networks fail. Maybe because paper still keeps secrets better than clouds when a city starts choking on itself. She says we wait until daylight tomorrow. I say the email said before dark. She says every message from a hidden source sounds urgent by design. Luis settles it by saying he will not leave the building again until we know the doors, sight lines, and roof access. Practical beats curiosity for the next hour. We make a sweep for useful gear, flashlights, extension cords, zip ties, duct tape, a box of work gloves, 2 pry bars, a stack of shrink wrap, paper towels, bottled ink cleaner that I set aside from any flame because one bad habit in a print shop can burn the whole block. We ration tasks without talking too much. Mara fills sinks and every container she can find because water pressure will not stay reliable if half the district loses power. Luis checks the generator, drains old fuel, and gets it running behind the dock with the exhaust pointed through a vent gap. I cover the front windows inside with banner stock and foam board so no light spills at night. Then I make myself do the thing I have been avoiding. I open one printed copy of Ward 0 on the front office desk and start marking every place where fiction touches anything real enough to get us killed. Hospital entrances based on local layouts. Water plant access road lifted from a county map. Old rail spur near the canning district. Names changed, shapes altered, still too close. I wrote the book to feel lived in. I succeeded. Now I hate the precision. Mara comes in while I am crossing out pages with a black marker. She reads one paragraph and stops. It describes a city line at a pharmacy door where people are still orderly because nobody has accepted the shortage yet. She says I did not predict anything supernatural. I predicted bureaucracy and human denial. That should calm me. It does not. Around sunset, the power flickers twice and dies across the block. The shop settles into a new silence broken only by the generator outside and the occasional thump from distant streets. We keep one light on in the back office and another near the press floor. Nothing by the front. My phone briefly catches enough signal for a flood of cached posts. The manuscript thread is everywhere now. Short clips, reaction videos, stitched screenshots. Strangers reading my query letter aloud. Someone found an old podcast where I talked about researching county emergency plans. That clip is getting pushed with captions that say, "Author admits he had inside documents." Another post, claims the city borrowed my book for contingency planning and that the outbreak started during a failed drill. Another says I planted ideas that inspired copycat attacks inside hospitals. Lies spread faster once everyone has to guess at too many missing facts. Mara takes the phone from my hand and powers it down. She is right again. Information stopped being information hours ago. It is mostly ignition. We eat crackers and canned tuna from paper sample boxes while the light outside fades. No one talks much. Every few minutes, one of us goes still because some distant sound carries through the loading dock wall. A burst of shouting, a siren cutting off, metal striking metal, a rapid knocking that might be construction from another block, until you remember nobody is doing normal construction after dark on a day like this. Luis asks whether the roof gives a view toward the avenue. I say yes. We go up together while Mara sorts bandages and inventory in the office. From the roof, the industrial district looks half asleep and half abandoned. Farther east, the city center is alive with emergency light. I can see the glow even where buildings block the direct view. On Halpern Avenue, 3 blocks over, headlights crawl past the Records Annex gate. Some traffic still moving. Good. At the far corner by a welding yard, 2 figures shove at each other under a street lamp. One falls. The other keeps moving. No one stops to help because no one else is there. That is the part I never managed to make readers believe in workshops. Not the dead rising, not the hospital spread. The quiet abandonment of tiny public duties. Mara joins us on the roof with a pair of binoculars she found in the office manager's desk. She sweeps the avenue, then the rail yard, then the long street leading back toward downtown. Her jaw sets when she sees the first loose cluster moving without cars. Not organized foot traffic, not commuters. A scattering of people walking in broken lines, some fast, some drifting, some stopping in the roadway. One person bends over near the curb and stays there too long. Another runs past and does not look back. She hands me the binoculars. Half a block from the corner, a woman in a hospital gown with one bare leg and an identification band still on her wrist is moving down the center line. Her path is wrong. Too direct. Not searching. Not staggering from confusion the way drunks and concussed people drift. She bumps a parked car, corrects, and keeps coming west. In my novel, I spent pages trying to describe the difference between illness and intent once motor control breaks, but drive remains. I think I got closer than I wanted. We go back downstairs and move a second press against the front door. By full dark, somebody is outside the gate. We hear the rattle first, chain against metal, then a male voice calling out that he sees light and needs help. We kill the back office lamp and listen. He says his wife is sick in the car. He says he just needs water and directions. Mara looks at me, then at Luis. Nobody answers yet. The voice gets sharper. He says he knows this building used to be a print shop, and he knows someone is inside because he saw the dock light earlier. That part is true. Luis motions for silence and climbs the dock stairs until he can peer through a crack in the loading bay frame. He comes back and says there is one sedan outside the gate and one man visible near the fence. No wife in sight. No movement in the driver's seat. Could still be real. Could still be bad. The man calls again. This time he says my name. Not loud, certain. He says he only wants to ask a question about Chapter 18. Mara mouths no. I do not need the reminder. We stay silent. After 2 more minutes, the man spits against the gate, curses, and drives off. 10 minutes later, another vehicle rolls slowly past without stopping. No one sleeps much after that. I take first watch in the office and sit beside the dead reception desk with the manuscript open on my lap. I am not reading for art anymore. I am reading for liability. Every route, every supply assumption, every false safe zone I built to pressure my characters, all of it now exists as potential bait for desperate strangers who think fiction can save them. In Chapter 18, the protagonist uses a county archive basement to hide from a crowd after rumors spread that he knows where quarantine buses are headed. I wrote the scene after North Exit sent floor plans for a public records building marked for emergency storage conversion. Same building as Locker 112. Same chapter, the man at the gate named without seeing the pages. That means at least one person outside had more than screenshots. Either a leaked full copy is circulating, or someone with access to my query package has been handing pages around. I go cold in the practical sense. Not fear running through me, just a simple conclusion. The book is no longer just rumor fuel. It is directions. If Locker 112 holds anything that explains why, I need it before more people start reading. At dawn, the city sounds wrong in a way I cannot cleanly describe without exaggeration, so I keep it simple. There are fewer engines, more isolated impacts, more voices traveling farther because traffic no longer blankets them. We make instant coffee on the camp stove and decide to move before full light. Luis wants to stay and hold the shop. Mara wants answers enough that she does not argue long. We settle on all three going because splitting early is how people lose track of each other permanently. We leave the generator off, lock every entrance we can, and mark the inside of the dock door with tape, so we will know if someone got in while we are gone. I take the locker key, the revolver, one flashlight, and my laptop in a messenger bag because abandoning evidence now feels stupid. Mara takes the med bag. Luis takes a pry bar and a box cutter from the shop. The walk to the annex is under 10 minutes on a normal day. We decide to go on foot because starting the van announces too much. The street outside smells of wet cardboard, old oil, and smoke carried from somewhere beyond the rail yard. We head north through alleys. The industrial district holds damage in pockets. One storefront window shattered. One delivery truck sitting open with 3 cases of bottled tea spilled into the gutter. A chain-link fence bent outward where someone climbed in a hurry. At the corner by the welding supply yard, the man we saw shoved under the street lamp last night is still there. He is lying on his side with one shoe missing and a dark patch under his shoulder. Mara kneels anyway because some reflexes outlast common sense. She checks his neck, then steps back and wipes her hand on her jeans. No words. We keep moving. 2 blocks later, we hear banging from inside a self-storage office, quick and regular, then stop hearing it before we can decide what it means. Halpern Avenue is wider and more exposed than the side streets, so we cross behind a line of parked trucks and use the shadow of a warehouse wall. On the far side, the county records annex stands behind a low iron fence with a glass front entry and 3 narrow basement windows at ground level. The lot is empty except for one county sedan parked crooked over 2 spaces. Driver door hanging open. The front glass has not been broken. That unsettles me more than shattered glass would. The building looks paused, not looted. We slip through the gate and hug the wall. Inside the vestibule, papers are scattered across the tile, maybe from somebody searching, maybe from a fire alarm draft, maybe from simple panic. The inner door is unlocked. Lobby desk abandoned. Security monitor dark. Hallway sign pointing downstairs to archival storage. My own scene from Chapter 18 comes back to me in pieces, and I hate that my feet know where to go because I invented a version of this building. The real one is slightly different. Brighter paint, lower ceiling, worse smell. Still close enough that every turn feels stolen from memory. Locker 112 is in a row against the basement wall beside record shelving. Small metal employee lockers, dented and beige. The key works on the second try. Inside is a thick brown envelope, a flash drive, and a folded note with my name written in black marker. No explosives, no trap, no grand reveal. Paper. The oldest technology in the room still wins. I open the note first, because paper can be read in bad light, and because my hands trust it more than unknown electronics. Ben, if you are reading this, then the cover burned off faster than I planned. I never knew an outbreak was coming. I knew the county and hospital network were preparing for a mass casualty event far outside what the public had been told. I pulled procurement trails, overflow memos, body handling language, mobile refrigeration contracts, school transport contingencies, and law enforcement staging plans, because the documents were in systems I maintained. The planning annex used Birch intake for off-site triage in draft language. I sent material to you because fiction can carry truth past legal threats. If people noticed the pattern in a novel, maybe questions would follow before implementation. Instead, someone inside publishing leaked enough pages to turn your book into a rumor engine. Do not trust any route or site mentioned in manuscript copies. Those locations were discussed in old planning tables and may be watched or overwhelmed. Burn my name. Burn the pages if you can. What you predicted was not the dead. You predicted what institutions do when they are afraid to say out loud that they are losing control. Signed, N. Pike. I read it twice. Mara takes the page and reads it once with her mouth set in a hard line. Luis asks the only useful question. What is in the envelope? Contracts, maps, printed emails, and a county mutual aid annex with half the pages stamped superseded but still legible. Enough to confirm North Exit had access. Enough to show school buses, refrigerated trailers, and overflow intake sites were real contingency measures built into pre-existing plans. No proof of a plot to cause anything. No secret laboratory. Just grim bureaucratic homework for the day somebody in power hoped would never come. The flash drive probably contains the same material plus more, but opening random media in a citywide failure seems dumb when paper already answers the central question. I did not foresee the dead waking. I recognized the way officials soften language and move bodies behind fences. The thought should steady me. Instead, it leaves me with a different problem. If false safe routes from the novel mirror old planning sites, desperate people may already be moving toward those sites because they think the book is a guide. Some of those places might now be active intake zones, police cordons, or traps created by crowd pressure alone. Mara folds the note and slips it into her pocket. We are halfway up the basement stairs when footsteps hit the lobby above. Not careful, fast, more than one person. Luis puts up a hand and we stop. A male voice says the building was open. Another says check downstairs because the author wrote about a records basement. My stomach drops with mechanical clarity. Someone did leak more than screenshots. Mara points toward a service door under the stairs that I do not remember from the book because I never knew it existed. We slip through into a narrow utility hall lined with conduit and old pipes. The door does not latch fully, which gives us a crack of sound from the stairwell. The first person reaches the basement and kicks locker 112 open a second too late. I hear metal slap concrete. Then another voice, Younger, says somebody took it. A woman asks whether I am sure this is the building. The first man answers by reading one line aloud from Chapter 18 about county basements and false quarantine rosters. That line exists. I wrote it in a fever at 2 a.m. last autumn. Hearing it spoken in a dark government hallway during an actual collapse makes the sentence feel criminal. The utility hall ends at a loading ramp door chained from inside with cheap hardware. Luis eases the chain loose while the voices behind us grow louder. One person is already checking the service door. We get the ramp open a foot at a time because swollen metal sticks in the track. Morning light cuts into the hall. Outside is a narrow concrete bay facing an alley. Empty. We run. No clean tactical movement. No movie stealth. Just 3 adults grabbing bags and paper and moving fast enough to stay ahead of curiosity, turning into pursuit. Someone behind us yells when the service door finally gives. Luis slams the ramp down with both hands, buying 5 seconds. We cut east, then south through an alley between a bakery warehouse and a shuttered office supply place. At the far mouth, a man in a county maintenance vest stumbles into view with blood down one sleeve and keeps walking without looking at us. Mara starts toward him, then stops when he turns. His face is slack in the wrong way. Eyes open, mouth working. His steps are uneven but committed. He sees movement and changes direction toward us immediately. That decides the issue. We turn and run the other way. Back at the print shop, the tape seal on the dock door is broken. That sight gives me more focus than any speech could. Someone entered while we were gone. Luis keys the side door with one hand and keeps the pry bar ready in the other. Inside, the front office has been tossed. Desk drawers open, manuscript pages all over the floor. Someone tore one printed copy in half and tracked muddy shoe marks across Chapter 22. The back office is still intact. Generator still there. Water containers untouched. So whoever came in was searching, not settling. Maybe the same group from the annex. Maybe another. Mara checks the inner rooms while Luis climbs to the roof. When he comes back down, he says 2 people are moving slow at the end of the block, and one van is parked farther north with the door open. No direct assault yet. I spread the annex documents on the office floor and start sorting. Real intake sites, old staging sites, traffic control points, public shelters, fuel depots. 3 of those are close to locations from the novel. That is enough overlap to ruin them. Mara sits beside me and reads while eating dry cereal from a sample cup. She says out loud what none of us wanted to admit. We cannot stay here now that both the building and the district connect to the manuscript. Leaving means making a new plan from materials no stranger has read. We use what we know, not what I wrote. Luis knows his delivery routes, especially the quiet utility roads nobody notices because nothing flashy sits at the end of them. Mara knows which clinics got bypassed during hospital surges and which outlying facilities still had generator capacity 2 months ago. I know the county maps buried in the annex papers. The best option is a water department maintenance yard beyond the old reservoir on the North Ridge. Not in the book, not in public rumor. Fenced, gravity-fed water nearby, machine sheds, and a caretaker house used during storm responses. Hard road in. Few reasons for casual foot traffic. The problem is distance and road conditions between here and there. Too far to walk with gear. Too exposed to reach by main avenue. We need the van, which means we need to clear the gate, fuel up once if possible, and move before anyone outside decides the shop is worth testing harder. While we argue routes, a bottle hits the front wall, then another. Someone has found us again. The first real attack is small and stupid, which makes it more dangerous than a disciplined one. 4 people outside the fence, maybe 5? 2 shouting, 1 filming, 1 throwing whatever glass he can scrounge from a crate in the alley. They are not raiders in matching gear. They are scared citizens with rumor in their heads and a location pinned on a screen. One man keeps yelling that the writer owes people the truth. Another says the county is using my book and I know where the buses are headed. A woman near the gate asks for directions to Birch Intake with such raw need in her voice that I nearly answer just to stop hearing it. The truth would not help her. Birch Intake is a code phrase on paper, not a safe room with blankets. Luis starts the van inside the dock, while Mara and I move paper stock against the side windows. The engine noise brings more attention immediately. Someone outside slams something heavy against the chain gate. Another person shouts that we are escaping with information. Mara tells me to get in. I do. Luis rams the gate on the second try hard enough to tear one hinge and push the opening wide. Glass flies past the hood. Then we are out. Industrial streets that looked empty an hour ago now hold clusters of stalled vehicles and people moving between them with boxes, backpacks, and improvised carts. Not everyone is hostile. Most are too busy trying to hold on to the next 6 hours. That almost makes it harder. A city does not split into monsters and innocents. It fills with pressured decisions. At the corner by the welding yard, a delivery truck blocks half the lane, while 2 men siphon fuel from a sedan under cover of their own bodies. Near the bakery warehouse, a woman drags 2 children by the wrists and does not break stride when one shoe comes off. We take back roads north and avoid every visible clinic, school, and police line. Mara studies the annex pages on her lap and scratches out locations from my manuscript whenever she finds a match. I keep watching mirrors because I expect the filming crowd to follow. Maybe one car does for a while, hard to tell in the churn. Then the driver peels away toward a gas station with a line wrapping around the block. The city is fragmenting by need. Pursuit loses strength once hunger or fuel gets in the way. Halfway to the ridge, we hit our worst stretch yet. The boulevard under the old rail bridge is jammed with abandoned cars, and one city bus turned sideways after clipping a median. People are squeezing between vehicles on foot. A box truck door stands open with canned goods all over the pavement, some crushed under tires, others scooped by anyone quick enough to grab and run. On the bus steps, a driver in uniform is slumped against the handrail. No movement. Ahead, 3 figures strike the bus windows from inside with hands and elbows, passengers trapped or infected, or both. Mara says we cannot push through without getting pinned. Luis cuts right into a furniture outlet lot, down a service lane, then over a curb into the rear of a strip center. One storefront has smoke leaking under the security gate. No flames visible yet. At the pharmacy drive-thru, cars sit door open and empty. The speaker keeps repeating a recorded message about adjusted hours. That one mechanical voice echoing through an empty lane bothers me enough that I roll the window up even though it was barely cracked. We stop only once for supplies, at a pet and farm store where Luis used to deliver feed. The front doors are broken, but the rear receiving bay is still shut. He gets us in through a side employee entrance he remembers from drop-offs. Inside, the place is dim and half-emptied, not destroyed, just searched by people who knew what mattered first. Water troughs, work boots, overalls, tarps, gloves, pet food torn open on the floor, seed bags ripped at one end. Mara clears the office for medicine and comes back with basic first aid, pain relievers, electrolyte packets, and 2 hand-crank lanterns. Luis loads water containers, rope, and a bolt cutter. I take canned food and a map rack from the counter because road atlases work when phones stop. In the back by the receiving pallets, one employee is hiding under a desk with the office phone in her lap. Middle-aged, red eyes, store apron still on. She points a nail gun at us until Mara speaks to her in the calm hospital voice she used on intoxicated patients back when our lives were normal enough for her to tell me about those shifts over noodles at midnight. The woman's name is Sheila. Her manager locked up and ran. She stayed because her son said he was coming. He never did. We bring her with us. 4 people changes the sound inside the van. More breathing, more gear, more ways for silence to turn heavy. Sheila is not weak, just stunned. She keeps apologizing for slowing us down even while she is moving boxes and making herself useful. That kind of apology tells you what sort of life a person had before collapse. She offers the best route toward the ridge because her ex-husband works parks maintenance and used to complain about contractors cutting across the reservoir service road. We take her lead. The road climbs out of commercial blocks into older neighborhoods where front lawns are turning into supply staging areas. Generators on porches, coolers beside cars, one family loading mattresses into a horse trailer, another house with every curtain open and furniture shoved against the front door. At a 4-way stop, a man stands in the road with a handwritten sign asking for insulin. Cars edge around him without contact. Nobody rolls a window down. Mara watches a small, urgent care clinic pass on the left and says the lot is too empty. I know what she means. Lots do not empty themselves. Either people ran or people got moved. Neither outcome is good. By early afternoon, we reach the ridge road and see the reservoir through trees. Broad gray water under a white sky, still enough from this distance that it makes the city behind us feel unreal for one dangerous second. The maintenance yard sits another mile north behind a chain fence and a green sign most drivers ignore. Water department authorized access only. 2 machine sheds, a small office, a caretaker house with a deep porch, and a standpipe tower behind the slope. No visible movement. Luis stops 100 yards short so we can watch. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. Mara checks Sheila's pulse with 2 fingers because the woman has gone pale from stress and poor food. Then we roll forward. The front gate is locked. Bolt cutter solves that. Inside, one department pickup is parked under the awning with keys gone but tires good. The office door is secured with a push bar that opens from inside after Luis pries a side window and reaches through. The house is cleaner than I expected. Not lived in recently, yet maintained. Utility sink. Cots in one back room. Canned soup in a cupboard. Water pressure still on. To this point, it is the best news of the day. Good news never stands alone. In the office, we find a clipboard log with entries from 2 days ago, noting emergency staffing call-ins and a handwritten line that reads, "Public route closure pending instructions from County EOC." There is also a printed memo on the desk about preserving water quality during civil disruption. That phrase tells me more than the whole page. Somebody expected trouble reaching this yard before we did. Maybe staff never arrived. Maybe they came and left. Maybe something on the property changed after the log ended. We clear every building anyway. Machine shed 1, empty except for mowers, chainsaws, tool lockers. Machine shed 2, pickup parts, road salt, old storm barricades, 1 utility cart with dead batteries. House basement, empty, dry, shelves, 2 broken chairs, 1 furnace, standpipe ladder, secure, no bodies, no blood, no sign of a fight. That matters. We shut the gate behind the van, chain it with the cut lock looped back to look intact from a distance, and start carrying gear into the house. The first place that is useful but not yet ruined can tempt a person into optimism. I refuse the word, yet my hands move faster all the same. The afternoon goes into labor. Fill sinks, stack food, check every room twice, test generator behind the shed, search the pickup for maps, flares, and department radios, inventory medicine, strip sheets from the cots, and air-out blankets. Luis rigs a noisemaker line on the porch with fishing bells from a supply cabinet. Sheila washes every cup in the house even though it does not matter yet. Ordinary work can keep a mind from cracking open. Mara sits with the annex documents at the kitchen table and starts building a real map from them and from what we saw on the road. Confirmed hospital zones, probable police cordons, shelters that may already be overloaded, utility nodes, fuel sites. She keeps crossing out every place that appeared in Ward 0, even vaguely. That act becomes its own ritual. Remove the book from the world. Remove the false authority. At one point, she finds the scene where my protagonist hides at a reservoir maintenance yard after a county archive run. I had forgotten writing it. Different reservoir, different shape. Close enough that she tears the whole chapter out and feeds it to the stove in the basement. I do not stop her. Signal returns briefly near sunset, enough for the phone to vomit one last batch of the outside world into our kitchen. State emergency declaration. Hospital visitors suspended countywide. Curfew announced, though nobody explains who will enforce it. Several clips of attacks in parking lots and on intake ramps that I do not play with sound because the image already says enough. A national host has my author photo next to the words, "Did this novelist know?" Someone leaked a full early draft of Ward 0 to at least 3 forums. The file includes comments from my agent, tracked revisions, and the original chapter titles with terms I cut before submission. Birch intake is in there. So is a sketch map I made for myself based on county procurement sites. My old email inbox pings with interview requests, threats, pleas, and one message from a publisher asking whether I would authorize an emergency digital release because public demand has surged. I read that line 3 times and then shut the phone off for good. Some industries remain themselves until the wall hits the window. Publishing is apparently one of them. Mara watches my face and does not ask what the message said. After dark, we finally talk in full sentences about what the note means. Not the rumor version, the practical version. North Exit, Nolan Pike, was not feeding me prophecy. He was feeding me pieces of emergency preparation hidden inside county systems. I used those pieces to write fiction grounded enough to become credible once real institutions began reaching for the same buried plans during a real crisis. Then somebody in publishing or adjacent to publishing leaked pages. The book turned into a false guide, then into a conspiracy object, then into a target on my apartment door. Sheila listens from the sink while drying cups. She says people always want one person to blame because diffuse failure is too big to grab. Luis says people also want maps. A map feels solid even when it is wrong. Mara says both things can be true. Then she looks at me with that sharp, tired face and says the hardest sentence of the day. You are dangerous to keep near any public group now, even if none of this is your fault. Not because I will betray them, because rumor will follow. because someone will always think I know more than I do. She is right. I hate her for being right for about 3 seconds. Then the feeling burns off. We set watches. First Luis, then me, then Mara near dawn. Sheila sleeps on the couch with a flashlight under her hand and her shoes still on. I sit at the front room window between midnight and 3 in the morning, looking through a slit in the blinds toward the gate and the dark service road. Once a vehicle passes without slowing. Once I hear distant gunfire from farther down the ridge, 3 pops, then nothing. Once the bells on the porch twitch in the wind and my hand closes around the revolver before I recognize the pattern. I keep thinking about the publishing email because it is grotesque in such an ordinary commercial way. Public demand has surged. The city may be dying in hospital corridors and parking lots, and somebody still smelled a sales opportunity. I should be angry at the publisher. Instead, I keep circling back to myself. I wanted realism. I wanted institutions to sound authentic. I wanted readers to say no other Outbreak story bothered them this much because it felt possible. Well, possible showed up. The note from Nolan Pike said fiction was no longer safe cover. He was right. Not because fiction caused anything, but because people under pressure stopped distinguishing between story, plan, rumor, and order. Near 2 in the morning, the porch bells rattle once, then again. Not wind this time. Wait. I wake Luis with one hand and point toward the front. We move without speaking. Mara appears in the hall already awake, med bag over one shoulder and a kitchen knife in her other hand, because that is what was nearest. Through the slit in the blinds, I see a person at the porch steps. Man, middle-aged, coat hanging open, one hand on the rail. He is not trying the door. He is looking through the window with his face too close to the glass. I call out once and tell him to step back. No response. He presses his forehead to the pane and opens his mouth, not to speak, just to work his jaw against the glass. Mara exhales through her nose in one long thread. She has seen enough by now to know what he is. Luis goes out the side with the pry bar because letting that man stay on the porch until daybreak would be its own danger. I do not describe what happens in detail because detail is not necessary. Luis draws him away. Mara backs him up. The bells go quiet. When they come back in, nobody talks for several minutes. Reality does not need narration every second. Sometimes it just sits in the room with dirt on its shoes. Morning brings fog off the reservoir and a line of geese on the water that go on being geese because the natural world does not care about our categories. The maintenance yard still holds. The road still looks empty. The city glow to the south is dimmer in daylight, but harder in another sense because smoke columns show shape now. 3 separate fires, maybe more beyond the ridgeline. We spend the early hours tightening the place. Storm barricades dragged behind the inner fence. Office desk pushed against the house front door. Nails and scrap lumber turned into simple window braces. A rain barrel system rigged under the porch gutter because planning for next week is how a person refuses to die in the present. Sheila proves tougher than any of us guessed. She inventories food with a mechanic's precision and finds 2 locked freezers in the basement utility room stocked for storm crews. Not much, yet more than expected. Burritos, ice, bread, frozen vegetables. Small blessings count more once the framework goes. Mara teaches her how to boil and cool water without wasting fuel. Luis gets one department radio to hiss to life on backup batteries, mostly static. One burst of traffic around 10 that mentions corridor failure at County General and requests road closure support, no one answers. By noon, the rumor catches up anyway. 2 vehicles come up the service road together, a pickup and a sedan. They stop outside the gate and sit with engines running. We watch from the standpipe platform through binoculars. 4 adults get out. One holds up a phone, scanning the yard. Another bangs on the locked gate and calls for help in a voice pitched between demand and panic. We do not answer. The third person, a woman in a green jacket, steps closer and yells my full name. That tells us enough. She says she knows the writer is in there. She says the book mentioned reservoir staff housing, and she just wants confirmation whether buses are bringing clean evacuees north tonight. That is not true. It is rumor attaching itself to structure. I could shout the truth, and she would hear only denial from a man suspected of knowing more. Luis says, "Hold." Mara says if the gate gets tested, we fire 1 warning into dirt, and nothing more unless forced. The group stays 15 minutes. No one tries the fence hard. Eventually, the sedan leaves. The pickup lingers another minute, then backs down the road. A location mentioned nowhere in the book would have stayed invisible longer. I do not say that out loud. Everyone in the yard already knows it. That afternoon, I do the one useful thing left that belongs specifically to me. I take the annex papers, the note from Nolan Pike, and every printed copy and draft page of Ward 0 into the basement furnace room. I keep the note itself after photographing it for evidence. Everything else goes in batches: chapter stacks, query pages, synopses, margin comments, maps, the whole sick paper trail that let fiction blur into operating rumor. The pages burn fast once the corners catch. Ink curls. My own words blacken and collapse into gray flakes that drift against the furnace door. I expect grief. I get relief first. Not clean relief. Not victory. Just the end of carrying a weight that had turned hostile. Mara stands in the doorway and watches until the last chapter falls through. She says burning paper will not erase the copies already online. I say I know. This is not for the internet. This is for the room. For us. For the next decision. After that, I sit at the workbench with a legal pad from the office and start writing something else. Not a novel. A plain account. Hospital entrances, official language, route failures, what we saw, what rumor did, facts stripped of performance. If I am dangerous in one form, maybe I can still be useful in another. Near evening, the department radio finally catches a live human voice for longer than 10 seconds. Female, clipped, exhausted. She is calling from a treatment station at the fairgrounds and asking whether any water department crews remain on the North Ridge. She repeats the request 3 times. Luis answers because a practical lie helps nobody. He says we are civilians sheltering at Yard 14 and asks for situation. The voice takes a second to answer, either from surprise or caution. Then she says the fairgrounds are over capacity, county roads are compromised, and several unofficial convoy rumors are drawing crowds into closed corridors. She says if we have potable water and a defensible perimeter, hold position. She says hospitals are no longer safe walk-ins unless visibly staffed and operating. She says do not trust social media shelter maps. Then, after a pause, she says one more thing in a tired, flat tone. If anyone asks about author sites or birch roots, ignore that noise. We are losing people to rumors. The transmission cuts after that. We all stand still in the kitchen because hearing an unknown official dismiss the same rumor that chased me across the city lands differently than hearing it from our own mouths. The rumor is bigger than me now. That should make me feel smaller. It does not. It only confirms scale. The next 3 days settle into the ugly work of remaining alive. We do not leave the yard except for short, controlled trips down the service road for abandoned supplies. We salvage 2 bicycles, extra fuel from an overturned landscaping trailer, and tarps from a park maintenance shed. Sheila turns frozen vegetables and soup into meals that taste almost normal if nobody speaks during the first bite. Mara keeps notes on symptoms, progression, and behavior from everything she saw at Mercy South and from what we observe on the road below. Luis refines the perimeter until the place holds layers: outer gate, inner barricades, porch bells, darkened windows, rooftop sightline, fallback to basement if needed. I write and listen and help where hands matter. Twice strangers come to the gate and ask for water. Once we give sealed bottles through a gap and send them away. Once we refuse because one man in the group keeps glancing past us into the yard, and his story changes every minute. At night, the city to the south loses more light. During the day, columns of foot traffic begin moving north on the far road. Not toward us exactly, just away from where official words failed first. That movement tells its own truth. On the 4th day, a local station manages one final over-the-air broadcast that reaches the pickup radio in the office. The anchor reads emergency bulletins from a backup studio with the strained calm of a person who no longer expects the shift to end on time. At one point, he mentions harmful misinformation tied to an unpublished horror manuscript that falsely identifies transport routes and intake zones. He does not say my name. Good. He says residents should rely only on verified municipal channels, which would be funny in another life, because verified municipal channels spent the first day lying by reflex. Mara hears the same thought in my silence and gives me a look that says, "Keep the joke to yourself." Fair enough. Verified channels can still help when all channels rot. Later, the broadcast switches to public service instructions about water, wound cleaning, and avoiding emergency departments unless absolutely necessary. Then it ends in the middle of a sentence. No music, no sign-off, just empty carrier hiss. Sheila reaches over and turns the radio off with 2 fingers, very gently, the way one closes a cabinet after hearing bad news in a room where others are sleeping. I keep writing the plane account in longhand because batteries fail and because paper under my hand now feels honest in a way the novel pages stopped feeling. I write what Mara tells me about the first restraints at Mercy South. I write what Luis saw on his delivery routes before dispatch went dark. I write the wording from Nolan Pike's note as accurately as memory allows. I write my own failure too. How easy it was to accept leaked documents when they helped the book. How little effort I made to verify the source beyond surface logic. How quickly a realistic manuscript became a weapon in the hands of frightened strangers once public trust broke apart. I do not write to clear my conscience. Conscience is personal. This problem stopped being personal when a woman showed up at our fence asking about a code phrase from a draft. I write so the sequence stays intact. People always edit chaos into cleaner stories later. Cleaner stories are how the next version starts. Not with monsters, with bad memory, institutional shame, and the desire to pin diffuse blame on one visible target. 1 week after the rejection email, I stand on the standpipe platform at sunrise and look south over a city that no longer sounds like a city. A few engines, birds, wind off the water. One burst of shouting from somewhere beyond the ridge and then quiet again. The road below the reservoir is nearly empty. Smoke still rises in thin gray lines from 3 districts. No helicopters this morning. No official loudspeakers. No new statements telling everyone the disruption is limited and controlled. Language eventually runs out of room to hide in. I think about Ward Zero, the book I wanted so badly to matter. It mattered in the worst possible way and for the wrong reasons. Not because it called the dead from the ground. Not because it predicted magic or knew some hidden origin story. It mattered because I understood a set of ordinary failures and wrote them plainly enough that, once reality took the same path, frightened people treated a novel draft as field guidance. That is the ugliest compliment of my life. It is still a compliment in one narrow sense, and I have to live with that too. Mara comes up the ladder carrying a mug of instant coffee for me and one for herself. She asks what I am looking at. I tell her I am trying to see whether the city has changed overnight or whether I only need it to have changed, because a week cannot hold this much damage without the mind wanting some marker between then and now. She leans on the rail and scans the road with binoculars. After a minute, she says the important part is simple. We are here. Water is here. The fence is still standing. Nobody needs me to explain the author rumor anymore because survival has replaced curiosity in most people who are still moving. She is right about that too. Rumor burns hot and short unless it gets fed by spectacle. We are no longer spectacle. We are just another hidden group behind a locked gate trying to preserve clean water, calories, and one more sunrise. There is mercy in becoming ordinary again. I take the coffee and drink it while it is still too hot, because small discomfort is proof that the larger system has not fully claimed every inch of the day. Later, in the caretaker house kitchen, I tear the first filled pages from the legal pad and fold them into a plastic document sleeve from the office. On the front, I print a title in black marker. Not a novel title, not something clever. Just Day 1 through Day 7. Verified by direct witness where possible. Mara signs under the section about Mercy South because her memory is sharper than mine on medical timing. Luis adds route notes. Sheila writes down what she heard customers saying before the farm store emptied, because collapse starts in retail language long before it shows up in headlines. We seal the sleeve and place it in the office file cabinet beside maps, water logs, and fuel counts. Maybe nobody outside this yard ever reads it. Maybe one day somebody does. Either outcome is cleaner than watching another draft mutate into rumor online. If I write anything else after this, it will be built from what I can defend, not from half-verified leaks handed over by a ghost in a county system. That decision does not redeem anything. It still matters. Most useful decisions arrive too late to count as purity. They count only as course correction. At noon, a small group appears on the far road and keeps walking without turning toward the yard. 2 adults. One older boy, backpacks, no car. They move with the practiced economy of people who already learned not to stop for every possible shelter. I watch them go until the trees take them. No one at the gate. No one shouting my name. The day continues with chores. Fence check, water barrel adjustment, generator test, lunch. Sheets washed in a tub and hung in the basement where they will dry slowly. Mara sorts medicine. Luis sharpens a hatchet on the porch steps. Sheila reorganizes the pantry and complains under her breath about whoever stocked only one kind of canned fruit for storm crews. I sit at the kitchen table with a fresh legal pad and begin again from the first line, because accuracy matters more than elegance now. I write, "The rejection email lands at 9:17 in the morning, and I keep going from there. Not because I think the page can save anybody. Not because I think the page controls anything. Just because this time I know exactly what it is. A record. Nothing more. And right now, in a world getting smaller by the hour, nothing more is a clean place to start.